The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tim from Osirium. We're just waiting for a number of other people to join the call, so we'll be starting in about 2 minutes' time. So just stay tuned and we'll start very soon. Thank you. Again, thanks everyone for joining the call this afternoon. We're just waiting 1 more minute and then we'll get underway. Just waiting for a few more people to join. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for taking time out of your days this afternoon to join us. We're going to start this session now, and we should get you back to your day jobs within the hour. So thanks again for joining us. My name is Tim Ager. I'm the Sales Director at Osirium, based here in the UK. This presentation is really to present a journey on the route to privileged access management and how we separate sysadmins from their passwords. This presentation is delivered in conjunction with our partner ITHealth. We've been working with ITHealth now for a very long time indeed, presenting the virtues of privileged access management and identity management within the NHS. I'm joined today by one of my colleagues, Terry Genvy. Terry is one of our professional services consultants, technical consultants here at Osirium. And Terry used to work at one of the largest police forces here in the UK. And whilst he was there, the organisation actually deployed Osirium to control their access from privileged users. So Terry's used the solution in a public sector environment, and he's going to be demonstrating some of the concepts I'll be talking about in the first part of this session. We've got about 25 minutes of PowerPoint just to set the scene and talk through some of the concepts we come across with our customers, and then we're going to demonstrate all of those key components that we're talking about today. So in terms of the agenda today, we'll briefly set the scene by explaining who we are as a business, and we'll go through some of the questions that our customers are asking of themselves and that they ask of us when they're looking at privileged access. We're going to take a look at the 3 Ps, that's people, processes and passwords, and then we'll move on to look at the expectations that you should have of a privileged access management solution. I'm then going to take you through the 3-phase journey to secure privileged access, and then we'll move on and demonstrate the technology so you can see those key components in action. So a little bit about Osirium before we start. The company is very interesting in the cybersecurity space because we're actually a UK-owned and UK-operated business. We are not your typical West Coast American or Israeli business. The great news for us and for our customers is that we eat, sleep and breathe most of the same regulations as our customers. The UK is our primary market. We are Cyber Essentials accredited. We are registered with the ICO. We have a data protection officer. So we understand all of the local constraints of GDPR, Cyber Essentials, and many other of the best practice guidelines and regulatory compliance guidelines. We were actually founded as a privileged access management provider. That's important because many PAM solutions were initially founded as a password management vault or as an auditing tool. And over time, they've added functionality and become very modular, and as a result, very complicated and quite expensive. Everything we talk about today is included in the standard Osirium PAM platform, so worth bearing that in mind as we talk through this. The other key component here is we have an element called task automation, and task automation is an extremely powerful tool because it allows us to enforce the principle of least privilege, controlling access only from users to what they specifically need to carry out their jobs, rather than giving them full, unfettered or uncontrolled access via native tools such as RDP and SSH. So we'll talk about that task automation piece later on in this presentation. Before we start, I'd like to sort of ask a few questions really and just see whether these are things that you're considering yourselves at the moment. Really, PAM is about considering how you control access from your privileged users, your sysadmins, your third parties, your service providers, outsourced service desks, but also from your auditors, your senior management, your HR staff. So it's a question of really considering how do you currently manage that access. And we'll discuss some of those topics and ways in which that's handled so far later on. Do you outsource any IT services? We come across many organizations that either outsource their entire IT department or they outsource service desk. And that outsourcing then can potentially become quite a lengthy and complex supply chain of outsourcers, which becomes a real challenge when controlling who is the actual end user coming into your network. How do you manage the access from third parties? Do you allow them access via a jump box in your DMZ? Do you allow them a go-to-meeting access into your network? Once they're in, you may know they're in, but how do you then control what they're doing in your network? Do you have resource constraints? Do you have skill shortages? I think every organisation in the UK that I speak to suffers from those, ourselves included. And that can obviously provide huge challenges because ultimately administrators that are doing work on your critical infrastructure and systems may not have the skills required to do those things effectively. Do you host services on behalf of other organisations? There's a huge consolidation drive and a collaboration drive in the public sector in the UK. And I've been working in that field for the last 6 years and have seen that collaboration across divisions and departments and organisations. So if you're hosting services, how do you control other people's access into those hosted environments? How much can your service desk actually manage and how much workload is offloaded to second and third line? This is all about first call resolution, shift left. If you can get your tier 1 support team doing more of the work and closing off more challenges and more problems, then your tier 2, tier 3 and DevOps guys can go back to doing the job they were hired to do, which is really moving your organization forward, making sure that it's secure by design, making sure that your patient systems are running effectively. And what compliance drivers are most important to you? Is it cyber essentials? Is it GDPR? How are you handling access to personally identifiable information? These are all questions that we're being asked or that our customers are considering when they're talking to us, and we can certainly help to address all of those considerations. In terms of the challenges around PAM, a lot of organizations have been aware of privileged access management or PAM for quite some time, and they've typically been deterred from deploying it because it's been perceived as a very complex, time-consuming, expensive type of solution to deploy. It's another set of processes for your admins to jump through. It's not particularly intuitive. It's just another pain, basically. And I think times have changed, and certainly organizations like Osirium have started to simplify the PAM solutions from an overhead perspective. It's designed for rapid deployment. It's much more intuitive. So hopefully we can demonstrate that during the course of this session. PAM solutions typically focus on privileged credentials, and that's really only addressing half the problem. It's all well and good to say my privileged credentials are secured, they're vaulted or they're encrypted, but when that user is being logged onto that target device, that Windows server, the domain controller, that Linux server, that router, that switch or that firewall, if that administrator has full native tool access to that device and they don't have the skills required to manage that device, then potentially they can make misconfigurations that could cause your organization some real problems. So looking at PAM solutions that only address the password is only really solving half the problem. And when you're providing access to underqualified staff with elevated access, it's putting you at risk not just from malicious attackers, but also from well-intentioned people. This is not just about North Korean state-funded terror. This is not people looking to steal every single patient record in your organization for some kind of national exposure. This is as much about well-intentioned people doing something by mistake and leaving your organization exposed. So let's take a look at people, processes, and passwords, which is a bit of a challenging mix. Starting with passwords, I think everyone's familiar with the risk of passwords. Most organizations have implemented VPN solutions and two-factor authentication for their traditional remote workers because they realize that static passwords are a risk. But most organizations haven't taken the same approach to their insiders, to their IT teams, and that's for a number of reasons, I guess, but a lot of organizations view their IT team as trusted internal staff there to keep the organization running, and to the greatest extent, that's absolutely true. But ultimately, privileged credentials are a greater target for hackers and malware initiators as a standard user's password. Why? Because if a hacker or a piece of malware identifies what appears to be elevated credentials, those credentials can be used to log into your network and to basically trawl through all of your infrastructure and servers until real data of value can be exfiltrated, can be stolen. So malware, phishing, in particular things like spear phishing, whaling attacks, targeting senior executives and people, line of business professionals and managers are a massive risk because they can expose not just personal credentials, but privileged credentials too. So when you think about privileged access management, I would urge you not just to think about it protecting you against the insider threat, but also as a baseline or a foundation strategy protecting against external threats like malware and like phishing attacks as well. And the reason for that is any type of malware or phishing attack, in order to be ultimately successful, needs to elevate its credentials in some respects to get into your internal network. Otherwise, those attacks are leveraging your endpoint devices, which have limited toxicity, limited data of value. And then there are people, good old people like me who are trying to do my job as efficiently as possible. And in an IT department, that's extremely important. Efficiency is key because you're keeping an organization operational, you're making sure downtime is reduced to a bare minimum, and you're trying to move an organization forward. And as a result, IT administrators typically will do things that will streamline their day-to-day work. They will share passwords, they will use shared accounts, they will tokenize passwords, use favorite football team, current year and current month, and every 30, 60 or 90 days change the last two digits to the next current month. They will write those passwords down, they will give them to people when needed. You've also got disgruntled employees. These are the people that make the news, they make the press all the time, and these are people that really want to do harm to your organization because they no longer care for some reason. And then you have to ask the question who the real insider is. If you outsource your services to Capita or to Capgemini or to CGI or to any number of third parties, doesn't matter how big or small they are, and ultimately these are third-party service desk and maintenance engineers that are connecting to your network with full privileged access to do so. If your third-party service desk provider has the skills to service most of your infrastructure, but don't have the skills required to maintain your firewalls, they may well outsource that capability to another third party. And all of a sudden, you have a supply chain. And with a supply chain, you may not have actual SLAs in place with the person that's logging in to do that piece of work. And as a result, the most privileged person coming into your network may be the least paid and the least visible to you as an organization. That supply chain risk is increasing on an ongoing basis here in the UK, and it's something that's very important to consider when you're looking at privileged access. And finally, you have processes. The number of times I hear organizations saying, we have a process for that. And processes are great, but processes are only really as strong as the people that are enforcing them and the people that are using them. And when you think about processes and passwords, they're a real headache. If you're an organization with 100, 500, 1,000 servers and devices, you've got to maintain somewhere a database of all of those current passwords. And when they change, you've got to update it again. You may store them in an encrypted Excel spreadsheet. You may save them in a Word document. You may save them in multiple places or multiple laptops within your IT department. In any case, I think we all understand the risk of having passwords on a laptop, which can walk out of an organization, and passwords being documented in a spreadsheet, encrypted or otherwise. So that risk is a real concern. but maintaining it is also a concern. Everyone needs to know where that spreadsheet is, where that list is, and everyone needs to have access to it. So yes, it's a process. Yes, you can change the passwords regularly, but if the passwords are vulnerable, then your process is basically flawed. Why is that important? For the very simple reason that last year in the UK, breaches of organisations looked a little bit like this. Just over half of attacks in the UK came from an external initiation point, but they required weak or reused passwords to elevate their privileges to get access to the internal network. So that's a real concern. On the left-hand side of this slide are 3 attack vectors that relate to the insider. And you'll notice that attack vector number 4 are your disgruntled employees. These are people that are going to abuse their level of privilege, and they don't care if they get caught. I got overlooked for that promotion. I didn't get the pay rise I wanted. These are people that no amount of IT security is going to protect you against, because if you lock them out of all of your systems, they'll go and stick a brick through one of your windows or slash someone's tires. They will find a way of causing damage and disruption to your organization. But controlling their privileged access can certainly assist in reducing that risk. Attack vector number 3 is slightly more concerning, because these are users who are abusing their level of privilege but do not want to get caught. These are IT administrators that are using your internal resources for illegal gain, Bitcoin mining, streaming illegal content, copyrighted materials, gambling on premises, but they don't want to get caught, so they're masking their identity, they're using proxy services, they're installing servers in your data center, and you don't know about it because you don't spend all your day in the data center, so you wouldn't find out. These people are dangerous because they typically get caught when you run a security audit or an assessment or a penetration test, and all of a sudden you're in a very awkward position as to whether you then report that to the authorities or not. And then finally, the attack vector number 2. About a quarter of breaches in the UK last year, and over the last 2 years actually, have initiated from someone who didn't actually mean any harm to the business whatsoever at all. And this is the real life situation that we all face, which is if you are the on-call support engineer and you're a tier 1 Windows engineer and someone can't get access to the network, you're going to try and log on to the VPN solution and try and fix that so that person can be productive. If you don't know how to administer the VPN solution, there's a fairly high chance you're going to make a mistake in reconfiguring that device, and that could fail the entire network open or the entire network closed. These people are just trying to do the best job they can for your organization, but they may cause misconfigurations just by trying to do the best job they can. And yet they represent almost a quarter of all exposure and breach in the last 2 years in the UK. And that's really where a PAM solution comes into play and justifies itself day to day, because if you've got disgruntled employees, only you can tell that, and I'm not here to tell you have. But I do know for sure that most organizations I deal with identify a weakness in their team around certain skills, and they need to make sure those users are not doing things wrong on their network. So what can you expect from a PAM solution? Why is this going to help? Well, PAM solutions are designed, as you'd expect, to control access from privileged users to critical infrastructure, Windows servers, Linux servers, patient record databases, routers, switches, firewalls, a whole range of solutions. They should be able to control access not just from insiders, but from third parties using shared accounts, sysadmin accounts. Doesn't really matter. Any type of account that's used to get access to critical infrastructure. PAM solutions should be able to control the passwords. And when I say control the passwords, I mean really providing full password lifecycle management. So not just encrypting passwords at rest, but encrypting those passwords and keeping them encrypted when they're in transit. There is no point in encrypting passwords in a vault, and when someone comes to use it, then checking them out of a vault and then typing them into your endpoint or copy and paste onto a screen. Because if there's malware of any type on that device, it's going to identify those passwords in the clear, and then you have that problem. So not just encrypting passwords at rest, encrypt them in transit, randomizing the passwords as well, and also maximizing password length and strength. The benefit of a PAM solution is really it's a machine talking to other machines. So if that machine, like a Cisco router or switch, can take a 128 character password, then your PAM solution should be able to give it one. As a result, you have fully encrypted, fully randomized, and fully maximized passwords. The strength and posture of those passwords is now beyond any kind of doubt. On the flip side, you should be able to provide some kind of operating benefits to your administrators in using a PAM solution. And that comes in the form of single sign-on. So rather than privileged users now having to know the passwords for 500 1,000 servers, they're now securely logging onto the PAM solution, typically enforced with two-factor authentication like Duo or Secure Envoy or RSA or whatever it may be. And then you have the ability to talk to people like ITHealth, who have their own managed services around authentication solutions, which they can integrate into the Osirium PAM solution to authenticate the users logging into Osirium, and then they're logging in from there in a single sign-on manner without knowing the privileged passwords to all the target servers. Very powerful for identifying individual users, but simplifying their log-on experience. The PAM solution should also be able to give you auditing capabilities. Every device, security device, should give you auditing capabilities, and PAM is no different. But I would argue very strongly that when you're talking about auditing in the privileged access environment, that ship is sinking. You are really arguing over deck chairs on the Titanic. If someone's coming to you saying, who did that bad thing 3 months ago, the ship is sinking. So really, auditing is only really important to me if it's linked to real-time analytics. If you can bring behavioral analytics into the real time, you have a potential to identify suspicious or anomalous behavior in real time, then you're reducing that risk window of unapproved or unauthorized privileged access. And then I'd ask the question, should you expect more than that? Most PAM solutions will do an excellent job of controlling the use of passwords. But if they give you then access via native tools into target servers, it doesn't solve that problem of those overprivileged, underqualified users doing something wrong, making inappropriate configuration changes. So let me talk you through the journey to PAM with Osirium, and then we'll get you onto a demonstration of the platform. The first phase that Osirium helps you with is discovery. Osirium is a fantastic solution for giving you additional benefits, one of which is giving you an inventory of all of your servers and devices. We act as an inline proxy. So once we know all of your target servers, the first thing we can do is go and interrogate them. And Osirium will pull back a list of all of the accounts with privilege that reside or have access to those target servers. So normally during a proof of concept phase, which is free with Osirium, most of our customers go an interesting shade of either red or green when they realize actually user Dave left the organization 3 months ago, but no one switched off his domain admin account access to the Windows estate. He's still got admin access to our checkpoint firewalls, for an example. So it allows you an immediate ability to start tightening the screws, improving the hygiene of your privileged access. So we're going to give you this discovery phase. You have 1,000 servers, and on 900 of those, you have accounts that haven't been used in over 3 months. You might want to switch those off, or you absolutely should switch those off or deactivate them. So that's really powerful in enabling you to start disabling unmanaged or unwanted or overdue accounts. Once you've done that, we start looking at the password lifecycle. Now, this is a standard function of PAM solutions, but Osirium takes this a real step further. One of the concerns organizations have around PAM is if it's a machine talking to our servers and the machine knows the passwords, what happens if the machine goes wrong? Because it's like the Terminator movies. Like at some stage, the machines are going to go wrong and start shooting everyone. So everyone has this concern. So we understand that, and as a result, Osirium has a gearing mechanism. You don't have to install Osirium and let Osirium take control of your passwords entirely from day one. We provide you with a range of 4 account profiles or statuses. So when you first deploy Osirium, you're going to have all of your accounts will show as unapproved. These are accounts that we've identified with our PXM platform, that we've audited them, we've identified them, but we're not managing those accounts as you'd expect. We need you to tell us what to do with them. So we have no visibility and no control. From that point, it's very easy to start making decisions about those accounts, moving them to a known status. And these are accounts where the PXM has identified those accounts and it's vaulting the passwords. The credentials are no longer shared with the administrator, they are kept within Osirium itself. So your passwords now have become safe from malware, phishing, sharing, RAM scraping, screen scraping, shoulder surfing, and so on. From there, you can ratchet up to the next gear, which is managed accounts. And with this, Osirium's PXM platform not just controls or knows the password, but it manages the password lifecycle. So it's encrypting the password, randomizing it, maximizing its length and strength, and changing it regularly. We can change the password in line with your standard password change policy, 30, 60, 90 days. As standard, the solution ships with the ability to change the passwords every week. You could change it every day. You could change it every time the password is used. That's down to you to determine. And at the very top of the tree, the top gear, if you like, is fully managed. And that's where the PXM platform from Osirium can start allowing you to manage role-based account access, and really sort of tailoring what people can do specifically with particular target devices and servers. And Terry will demonstrate how you rapidly change from these profiles very shortly. And then finally, you've done all the password stuff, which is the standard that most PAM solutions can do. So you've done 50% of the job. So congratulations, your passwords are now being well managed. Osirium's PXM platform has a module called Privileged Task Automation. And with Privileged Task Automation, it allows you not just to control access and manage the credentials, but also control access to a task-based level. So now, rather than controlling access but giving the administrator RDP access to your Windows servers, for example, we can control access down to specific tasks. Support engineer Tim is a tier 1 Windows engineer who only really manages our Windows estate and only really runs 20 to 30 regular commands. So we're going to publish only those 20 or 30 commands: flushing an ARP cache, resetting a domain password, adding a new account, restarting a service, stopping a service, flushing an ARP cache, things like that. So we can set those as tasks, and now when user Tim logs on, he doesn't get full RDP access. He can only see the list of tasks he can run, and Osirium runs those tasks fully audited, fully logged on Tim's behalf, and Tim can not only demonstrate those have been done successfully and securely, but they're also done much faster than user Tim would have done himself, because user Tim would typically take 5 to 10 minutes per task, but Osirium takes 5 to 10 seconds because everything is automated. So this is one of the real strengths that our customers see with Osirium. If you have time constraints and resource constraints in your support team, in your service desk in particular, Osirium's PXM platform with task automation can allow your administrators to carry out those tasks much more efficiently and free up their time to do the jobs they were really hired to do. So in very simple terms, you'll see from this slide, there's no mention of hackers and malware and North Korean terrorists and the Russians and the Chinese. This is all about people that have genuine reasons to access your network. And on the right-hand side is a list of resources and servers they actually have every reason to access. But unless you have something sitting in the middle, you have a real lack of governance over who's doing what, where, and when. And this is the massive risk. This is not necessarily about bad people. It's about bad people and good people and demonstrating what they're actually doing at the moment and being able to do something about it, to react to that. Osirium sits as an inline proxy, so we're going to be able to authenticate users before they come in. We can interrogate your service desk systems to make sure people have got a legitimate reason for carrying out a piece of work. We can pass off log files in a common event format to your SIEM tools, so we can actually give you a greater visibility at the back end of what's going on. But we can enforce governance. Is the right person coming in at the right time of day to do the right piece of work on the right target servers? In effect, why does your tier 1 Windows engineer or Microsoft engineer have full login details to all of your Linux estate and your firewall estate? They don't need it, so don't give it to them. It's as simple as that, providing you that level of control. And at that stage, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Terry, who's going to demonstrate hopefully in real time some examples of what I've just been talking about. Terry, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tim. So what I'm going to do for the demonstration is walk through a couple of real-life scenarios. Somebody new joining an organisation, how we grant them access and the privilege associated with that access, and then the reporting and the governance piece off the back of that. So how we bring accounts under control and how we report on what the user's actually done. So let me just come out of the demonstration and bring up my Osirium. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, I'm already logged in as an Osirium super admin. So somebody who's got control has the ability to alter the policy and grant access for those privileged users in the environment. What I'm going to do though is I'm just going to log in a brand new user, and then I'm going to grant the access they need off the back of that. So first of all, I need to log in and I need to prove who I am. So let's log in with my brand new user into the environment. And at this point here, I can log in with my AD credentials, a 2FA solution, locally to Osirium itself. I can combine all three of those together to log in and get access if need be. So the first thing I'm going to see as this user is a little pop-up to notify me potentially I'm going to be monitored and recorded. So I have to accept it to get access into the system. And now I'm logged in here in the client. You can see I've not got access to anything currently, apart from the Osirium server itself, just to check my profile and to reset my password should it be required. But let's start to allocate me some privilege. So the way that we provide access is all down to our profile mechanism in Osirium. It's a good way of splitting out device types, third parties, groups of individuals, and how we provide the access they need associated with their role. So first of all, I'm going to give access, as is sort of 99% of our customers we first engage with. We're going to give somebody full RDP access and access to the device. So let's add them into the inbuilt server profile first of all. So here, I'm going to add my new user into the group, which is going to give me access to these devices, in this case, using the inbuilt admin account, which in some organisations could be a concern, but with PAM tools, we can start to report against that. I can also tweak that access, choose to use a different account. If they're following the 2-account model, I could use that. But first of all, let's just pop in the user as if they've just joined the organisation. So if I go into our users, I'll track down the new account that I've created, add myself into that profile, and there we go. On the right-hand side, you can see now that as soon as my administrator's granted me the access I need, it automatically populates in my profile. So here, if I open up the SQL server, you can see I've got remote desktop. If I double-click that option now, Osirium's going to go and log me onto that device, and now it's going to proxy a view back in that connection back to my desktop. Really important to note there that I've not had any exposure to any credentials whatsoever, and Osirium's actually acted as that proxy, logged me in, and just sending that view back only to my desktop. The red box that you can see drawn around the edge there is session recording in play. If I click out of that, it goes away. If I click back in, it comes back into focus. So we are capturing everything that's taking place in that session and making the user fully accountable for everything that takes place, including capturing all the keystrokes associated. When the red box went away, that's because as soon as the launch window is out of focus, we stop recording. There's no point capturing that window if it's minimized while somebody's reading another article or working on another ticket. We only record when it's there and it's being used. So if I come out of that, so there I go, I've got full RDP access to a server, but let's take things up a little bit, let's take it up a notch. Let's think about what I'm actually doing. Well, I've joined the organisation, but I don't actually need full RDP access to a domain controller. Well, historically, I've probably had it because I'm adding users, adding them to groups, but let's start to think about task automation as least privilege model. Well, first of all, let's remove my access. I'm not going to need full RDP access. That's totally overprivileged for what I need. If I do that, tidies it all up, and you can see there again, my access is instantly revoked. Well, let's think about my role. I'm in the organisation, I'm there to work in AD to carry out those day-to-day tasks, keep everybody happy. Well, actually, let's think about popping me into the service desk profile that's relevant to that. So here, I choose the profile that's relevant. I'm going to pop myself back into it. And there we go. So now for my role, working on my AD devices, I've only got limited access now. No longer do I have full native access. So if I'm working in AD beforehand, it would have been RDP access onto the device with a privileged account into one area of it, users and computers. But that also gives me access to everything else that's on that device, when really I'm only using a very specific portion of what's actually hosted on that system. So if I need Active Directory use of the computers, I can have access to that. This now is actually signifying or signaling our MAP server, so our Managed Application Proxy, which sits alongside our core appliance, to launch that specific Microsoft MMC, create me a one-time account where the credentials are used and then disposed of again afterwards, and then launching the tool with the relevant account or level or role-based access that I need to run it. Once it's loaded that, it's going to inject those credentials, take me straight into it, and it's going to publish that MMC. But actually, let's take it a little bit further again. Let's really take least privilege to the next level. Well, what am I doing in that MMC that requires full access to it? Well, in this case, if it's users and computers, I'm going to be resetting passwords, adding users to groups, changing their accounts, which, yes, I could do for the tool, but actually, let's really tighten it up. Let's use tasks because it's quicker, it's more efficient, and it's more secure. So let's come out of that MMC and let's start to look at all the task options I've got available to me. So far we've gone for full RDP access. Now we've gone down to a specific tool, and now we're going to go down to the actual granular task that I'm there to do. In this case, I'm going to reset a domain account password. Not a difficult task in any way, shape or form, but if beforehand I've got full RDP access, massively overprivileged because I've got full exposure to everything on that device. So if I run this task, it's going to prompt me for the variables I need for it. In this case, it's always going to be the name of the user that we want to run the task against and the temporary password that we give that user over the phone so they can log in and choose one of their own. Now confirm the device I want to run the task on, and I could actually run that on multiple devices at the same time if I wanted to, if the task was applicable. Choose it, confirm it, and off it goes. That's the task run. So whereas before, full native access, now it's 2 fields to populate, a proceed button, and off it goes. Incredibly quick, no chance of any error there, and a lot more efficient to complete. It's going to hit continue in the background there, but actually Osirium's beaten me to it. It's reset that password in 15 seconds, which is quicker than me logging on directly. Well, let's start to think about the next scenario. Well, maybe I actually need to restart a service on that device, but I had full native access before, I could do it. I can open up services to see everything on there. Again, do we really want to grant somebody full access to view all the services on that server? No, we could start to use the restart service task. So if I double click on that, again, it's going to show me only the task elements which are relevant to my role in the organisation. So here, I've got principal or Windows Update. Choose the option that's applicable, confirm the device, and hit execute. Off it goes. Task completed. I can go and update my ticket that I'm working on, hit continue in the background there, wait for the confirmation to pop up here, which it has done. Task succeeded, less than 10 seconds to complete that one. Really, really powerful. So now let's start to think about some of this account auditing case, some of the bits that Tim spoke about, how we bring these accounts in line to actually provide our users this level of access with. So as Tim stated, when we provision systems to the solution, we start to look for a number of different bits of information. The main one that we're interested in, though, being a privileged account solution, is to look for these accounts with privilege that are present on all our devices, whether it's on the domain or whether it's a standalone device. So here in my accounts menu, you can see that I've got all these accounts as unapproved. As Tim described earlier, these are existing privileged accounts on that device, which we've audited and we're flagging for your attention because A, we didn't know they existed up till now, B, we haven't created them, and C, we're not managing them. So currently these can be used outside of any PAM solution and we've got no control, no audit trails surrounding them whatsoever. In this case here, the option I've highlighted, I've got an account that's popped up called test123 on my switch in my demo lab. I don't really want that. I don't know what it's being used for. It doesn't have a name surrounded it. It doesn't follow corporate policy. But how do I bring that under control nice and quickly, make it available if it's required, or simply remove it and remove that threat? Well, if I right click on the entry, the first thing I can do is instruct the PXM platform to lock that account out. If somebody is using it, they're going to try to log on and they're going to get the default device message saying you're not permitted to log in. In which case, if there's a genuine business need, they're going to come forward and say, well, what's actually changed? I know you've put a PAM solution in place. What's happened with this account? And then we can start to ask the relevant questions. Here, why is it named test123? What are you using it for? Should that account be there? All those questions that are really, really important. We could remove it if no one comes forward, if it's genuinely not used. Or if we want to bring it under management, we can start to go through the gearing mechanism. So if I change the state, I can make it known. At this point here, I'm going to prompt, or Osirium is going to prompt me the password for that account as it currently stands. It's going to ingest that password, encrypt it, take it into its onboard database, and then I can use it in a profile for single sign-on and for task access. Once I'm happy with that though, once I'm happy that the solution performs as expected, I can really take up the security and I can make it managed. At which point we're going to instantly connect to that device, make the password as long and complex as it can handle, and by default start to change it weekly. But that could be more frequent or less frequent, depending on your requirements. So once we put it in that known or managed state, that's when it's available for use back in our profiles to log people on with. As I said before, we do the same thing for Active Directory, so we can point at the relevant security groups, those groups of interest, audit the accounts that we need, and then we can create role-based access on top of this as well. So if you want to simplify the provisioning of access using a PAM, if any device supports roles, or even if it's for a role-based access on the network, on the domain, we can create these accounts. They'll come back as a fully managed account. So it's one that we've created, we're looking after the credentials, and it's tailored to the role that's required for that individual. They have no extra privilege on top of that role, it's just what they need for their job. And if you remove them from Osirium, we go and remove the accounts. So you can really simplify looking after those accounts on local devices, on the domain, across complex environments. We spoke a little bit about the inventory, how when we look for those accounts, we also pull back all the information relating to those devices. So in effect, at that point, we become a rolling CMDB. We're capturing the hardware version, the software version, and the patch level. And when we're regularly checking for those privileged accounts, we'll pull back those versions as well. And that's just to keep an eye on the quality of the information in the platform and to make sure that when it comes to auditing and reporting time, that everything is as expected and everything's right. And also really handy for identifying any vulnerabilities along the way there. So the last bit I'm going to touch on for the demonstration is the device access report, the main report about showing who's done what using which account on which devices and systems. So in here, you'd always see the name of the user. So this is my environment, so funnily enough, I appear a lot in it. The role or account that they've used, that includes being a super admin of the solution in the same way, so I'm fully accountable for my actions. If it's a shared admin account, again, you can see from the demonstration, I use the inbuilt admin account, but quite clearly, it's me who's used it. The IP address where I've logged in from, the tool that I've used, the domain control I've actually hooked that tool into, and then my duration and my active duration. So when the red box is popped up and in focus, and also when the window is minimized to keep an eye on that full session length. If I've been session recorded, I'll have the little play icon there. If I hit that, it will grab all the screenshots relating to that session, load up the player, and then I'm just going to change the playback speed to be fastest here. But now you've got a full visual record of everything that I did as an admin in that session. Really, really powerful for getting control over third parties, for making sure they're doing what they say they're doing, keeping an eye on it. If anything deviates, then you're going to be aware of it. But actually, really handy as well, if it's a core bit of equipment, you've now got a full visual record of any changes that have taken place. So you can review it, and if it goes wrong, you can remediate a lot quicker. Actually, if it's standing up a new system, well, why not export that video into an MP4 for our web UI and use it for a knowledge base article? Really, really powerful tool to have there. And all that as well is the historical record. All that information is getting fed into our behavior analytics engine. So if I break my normal working pattern or I log in from a location I don't normally use, it's going to log an alert. So it will go off to a scene over a common event format. It will email out. And then at which point somebody can log into here, watch what I'm doing. So if I was still active, a little eye icon would pop up next to the play icon, which is session shadowing. I could click that, watch what that user's doing, and if I don't like it, end the session and lock them out if it is malicious. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Tim.
Thank you, Terry. So great. So I hope that's given you a flavour for what the technology can do. Real snapshot. Obviously, these are very complex solutions, so it's not just as straightforward as that, but that gives you an indication of the key components. Just to finish off, the Osirium platform, everything we've seen there is a single virtual instance, a single virtual appliance instance. It can be installed in Azure, in AWS, in Google Cloud, and on-premise. Designed to be very quick to deploy, so most of our customers are up and running really sort of between 2 and 5 days. You don't have to install agents on any of your target servers, so it doesn't tie you in and it isn't overly onerous to install. And that templating concept, which allows you the task automation, is customizable. So if there are tasks that are specific to the way in which your team runs and operates, those can be built into the product, either using ourselves, working with ITHealth, or if you have the scripting skills internally, you can actually build out your own tasks as well. So we don't control that process. We do provide a proof of concept program. It is typically free of charge. So that's genuinely free of charge, normally 30 days in duration, and you get a day of free consultancy as part of that. So we actually help you to set up the solution and get it up and running. All of our scoping and prerequisites advice is, of course, free of charge as well. And in order to start everyone off, we do provide a fully licensed version of the product for up to 25 devices, for 25 target servers, if you like, totally free on a perpetual basis. So it has the full functions of the solution. If you go to the Osirium.com website and look for PXM Express, you can actually download it and request the download from the website. My contact details are on here. We're doing a lot of work in the public sector currently. We're going to hand over shortly to Chris from ITHealth. There were a couple of questions that just came up though. There was a question over the automation of tasks and how customizable that is. Hopefully I've just answered that question already in terms of the templating ability that comes within the product. In terms of use cases, we do actually have a document which I can again circulate with Chris from ITHealth after the presentation that presents a quick summary of all the main use cases we see in the public sector and in particular within the NHS as well. And a question come in about Cyber Essentials. We actually again have a white paper that explains specifically the security requirements or controls within Cyber Essentials that Pam can help to address. So if there are any questions or any resources you require after the presentation, feel free to let us know. You should get a link after this presentation to the recording, so that will come to you directly, so you should be able to download it locally as well for circulating amongst your friends and family, or colleagues more likely. At that point, I'll hand over to Chris from our partner ITHealth just to finish proceedings. Chris.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Terry. That was great. Really good again to see how this technology can help with securing servers and passwords. And just from an ITHealth point of view, I just want to touch on the fact that we've been working with Tim and the guys now for some considerable time. We're aware that PAM's not been a massive thing that's been going on within the NHS, but it's beginning to build a real head of steam now. We've got quite a few POCs that are going in some live sites. So this fits in within our cyber portfolio really tightly, alongside other products that we've got. And we would welcome any questions or any inquiries that people want to ask us about. In particular, my details on the screen, so feel free to drop me an email about this or any of our portfolio. Look at our website, you'll find all these things on our website as well. So again, thanks for joining us. Thanks to Terry particularly for that in-depth demo. I always find that I learn something new every time I watch this, so that's great. And again, thanks for your time, everybody. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.